Welcome to our cruise ship management class here at Northern Arizona University. We had we had a little bit of a snowstorm last night, so we're digging out. But you're in probably very nice weather there on the Mediterranean, right?
Yeah, it was sunny and about 24 centigrade, so it is at like mid 70s, upper 70s.
Yeah. So we know how to convert everybody. Basically, you multiply by 2 and add 32. So you said it was 28?
24.
24. So that's 48 plus 32, roughly. So in the 70s. Yeah. Great. Well, good to have you with us. I'm so glad.
Thank you.
I'm glad to see you. It'd be great if you can tell us a little bit about where you are. I told them you're on the Mediterranean, and it's always good when we have a guest speaker to kind of talk about your career track.
Sure.
Where you started, your career, what you're doing now, and opportunities for careers for our students graduating from our hotel and restaurant management school here at Northern Arizona.
Well, I'm sure there will be plenty of careers as soon as they graduate. At the moment, it's not the best business to be in, but there is definitely one of the best industries to be in general.
Good.
Let me share my screen. I've dug up out of the box some old pictures from the previous years. So, well, welcome everyone.
Great.
Thank you for having me, Professor.
You're welcome.
So my name is Niek van Woensel, and as you can see, I'm actually a graduate of Northern Arizona University in '09. I had a very enjoyable stay while I was there, and I definitely have good memories of Flagstaff. '09, when I graduated, was not particularly the best time to be graduating. I think a little bit before that, Lehman Brothers collapsed. Everybody was getting laid off left, right, and center. The financial crisis was in full swing. So I decided to go to grad school. I went to a Maastricht University in the Netherlands and got my Master of Science in International Business. While I was doing that, I finished all the classes and I was kind of looking at my thesis to write. And then Holland America approached me, and I actually joined Holland America Line in 2010. Before that, because now I'm running a little bit ahead of time. Before that, I worked for Mövenpick Hotels. It's a Swiss hotel chain. They have about, I think, 70 hotels at the moment. They're part of Accor now. At that time, they were still an independent chain. After that, I went to Starwood Hotels. I did some regional F&B development. In the Asia Pacific region out of Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. And then I went to Holland America Line, one of the finest cruise lines in the world as far as I'm concerned. The blue hulls are quite well known around the seas. I spent about 7 years there altogether. Went through a variety of positions. I started out as assistant beverage manager. Fresh out of college, more or less, coming in at, I think at the time I was about 22 years old, overseeing a team of 20 to 25 bar waiters, cocktail waiters. Did that for about a year, then got pushed onto a project for the food and beverage department, because when I joined, it was a separate food and a separate beverage team. So the two departments were separated from each other. They thought it was a good idea. Tried that for about 8 years. Then they figured out it was not such a good idea and decided to put it back together again as the F&B team. So I did the project to put the two departments back together again. Traveled around the fleet, which was quite interesting as I think it was a 23, 24-year-old person talking to people who had been with the company for about the same amount of time as that I'm old, and telling them how they should be doing their job. A great learning experience. Came back to the ships, became F&B director, oversaw the F&B team on a number of ships, which is quite an exciting job. I was doing both front of house and back of house. So I had an assistant, I had senior maitre d's, I had an executive chef, provision master, chief steward, but I'll get it back into that in the next slide and give a bit more of an overview. I then went to a corporate position, and I was fleet manager, food and beverage operations for Holland America Line, overseeing 14 cruise ships all around the world. I did that for about 2.5 years. I think after 2.5 years and roughly 800,000 frequent flyer miles, I thought it was more than enough, and I'd lived out of a suitcase for the majority of those years. I went back to Holland. I worked in Holland for a while as an F&B manager. Quite a change coming from a cruise ship to a small operation like that. Then decided to go to the Caribbean. Was a director of food and beverage for a 5-star resort, which by now the owner has sold, and it's becoming a Sandals property. And now I'm in Montenegro, a very, very, very small country on the Mediterranean, about the size of Rhode Island. And there I'm responsible for all hospitality and leisure for a real estate development company, where we have a 40-acre development going on, or a 60-acre development going on. And I'm responsible for our yacht club, all sports facilities, the Regent Porto Montenegro 5-star hotel. I'm currently developing a second hotel, which is going to be managed by Kersner, known from the One and Only brand. And we're conceptualizing and developing a third hotel, which is probably going to be managed by Belmont hotel chain. And we are in the first design stages and concept stages for another hotel, as well as more apartments and F&B facilities, and quite a interesting and dynamic environment to be in, which is a bit different than it was in before.
That's incredible, all you've done at such a young age. And we're proud to have you, call you an alum of NAU. And with all that development going on, you're going to need some good managers.
Exactly. Plenty of new managers.
Yes. Great. Thanks, Nick.
So, well, that was me probably about 7 years ago. I joined Holland America Line in 2010, and I joined the MS Oosterdam, which is a Vista class ship. We had at the time 1,920 passengers on board. They since then increased it a little bit, and I believe now they're reaching the 2,000 passengers, because they've added some more cabins and done some remodeling and etc. For about 7 years. I still remember the New Amsterdam being the last ship I was on. It was the signature class, slightly bigger, and that's the ship I said goodbye to at the time. On the picture, I am assistant F&B director. 2 stripes on my shoulder. At the time it was 2, by now it's 3 stripes. Yeah, the picture hangs on my mom's wall as well. She's quite proud of that one. So I'm sure that Professor has already talked a little bit about what happens on board cruise ships. I think I did a while ago, I did a class at Cornell University, a sponsored class, and I was taking it as a student, and we talked about the size of operations, etc. And I was talking with them that we were producing about 12 to 14,000 meals per day. And they were quite amazed, because there was no operation in the world, they said, that was producing that amount. So I told them cruise ships, because we have 2,000 passengers on board. They all get 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Then there's snack time in between. On top of that, there's 800 crew. The 800 crew gets 3 meals a day as well. So before you know it, you're reaching 12 to 14,000 meals easily per day that the galley produces. So you see a small picture of the galley on the bottom left corner. It's assistant cook in the preparing the display, actually, that they use for the buffet restaurant. In the middle picture, you see a small overview of the different positions that are available in the F&B team. And in the picture, you have regular waiters, you have wine waiters, you have the galley staff, which ranges from assistant cook all the way to executive chef, So assistant cook, demi-chef de partie, sous chefs, executive sous chefs, and then finally the executive chef. I don't think he's actually in the picture. He's hiding somewhere probably. Then there's restaurant managers, assistant restaurant managers, restaurant hosts, the chief steward and his team. There is actually a team of 28 people whose sole job it is to keep the galleys clean and to make sure all the equipment is ready to go and ready to be used, that the plates are there. We were spending, to put it in perspective, we were spending about $4,000 to $6,000 each week just to replace old china that was being chipped because of handling and just because of the sheer volume that we were doing. It just requires constant replenishment. And depending on how good your chief steward is, that amount can go down or that amount can go up. Because the good ones, they'll make sure that things don't get chipped. As soon as a plate is chipped, that's it, plate needs to go. First of all, it's not presentable anymore. But second of all, also cruise ships actually operate at a very high sanitation level. As soon as a plate is chipped, the sanitation program indicates that the plate can no longer be properly cleaned because it's no longer a smooth surface. So everything that is chipped is immediately discarded. On the right, I took some pictures. Some of them are, actually most of them are, all of them are all on America Line. Interestingly, the top right picture and the picture underneath with the blue are concepts I developed in my time as corporate F&B with Holland America. The top picture is Notes. It's a whiskey bar, 120 whiskeys available. It was originally envisioned as a lot bigger, to be quite honest, until the design was changed, and then this 9-seat bar was the final result. It was very popular though, so I'm quite happy with that. And then the blue one is the Grand Dutch Cafe, and it is only on the Pinnacle class ships, and it was styled after the Dutch heritage of Holland America Line. And it's a coffee bar during the day, and then late afternoon you can get your beers and your aperitifs before dinner there. All very much styled around the Dutch culture, because it's not with this interior, I do got to say, but the concept is much more common in Holland. It is actually quite loved by the guests, quite popular, quite a lot of people there on deck 3. Then the other picture is the Pinnacle Grill, that's to the left of that blue picture. And then the bottom bigger one, that's the main dining room on the new Pinnacle class. The main dining room is present on every ship. Usually can seat around on Pinnacle class, which has a capacity of 2,700 guests. The main dining room can seat 1,100 guests in one seating. So 1,100 covers. The galley is spread out over 2 levels. You have the main galley and the upper galley. And the only thing they do, it's like a conveyor belt. There are stations. Menus are developed in such a way that each main course item has one station, and waiters just collect from the station all of the dishes that they need to have, and they'll bring it out to the dining room. You'll see waiters walking around with up to 14 dishes on their tray. That was at the time the maximum they were allowed to carry. Also because the maximum people that we would seat at a table was 14. But it's actually quite a lot, and I've always had a lot of respect for them doing that. It obviously takes a lot of organization, a lot of effort to manage a F&B department of that sheer size. You're seating 1,000 to 1,100 guests in the main dining room. Then you have the Pinnacle Grill, which is on the picture as well. You can seat another 120 guests there, 150 guests. Then you have a restaurant upstairs, the Tamarind, Asian style, which seats another 90 guests. There's an Italian restaurant, which also does another 60 guests, 60 covers. And then there's still the Lido restaurant, which is your casual buffet style restaurant, which is doing another 200 guests a night usually. The main dining room operates in 2 seatings, so that's why you can actually reach the 2700. And people go to various locations, and and the interesting thing is at the same time you're also doing room service. So your galley team is just very, very busy. Your service team is very busy. Luckily enough, as F&B director, you have quite a number of managers and supervisors all around the ship. But it is quite a complex and quite a drawn-out operation, as I'm sure you can imagine, and probably have covered in the class as well.
Yeah, I have a question, Nick, if I can.
Sure.
So with all those venues, and you have a set cruise population, you must have really good records to forecast where people
Absolutely
are going to be. So if everybody wants to come into one, say the Asian, you know that what the demand is going to be. So you keep great records. So.
Yep. So the Asian and the Pinnacle were always quite popular. People would go and right away in the beginning and do their bookings right on the first day of the cruise. What was actually the most popular night always, and it is on every ship we had, was lobster night in the main dining room. And executive chef hates lobster night because the busier it is in the main dining room for lobster night, the worse his food cost is. Because obviously more of it is being consumed. Now we do keep a very good track of what we consume, how much we consume, how popular dishes are. What we also see is that certain dishes are more popular in, for example, cruises with a lot of British guests, while other dishes are more popular with cruises with a lot of American guests, while others are again more popular with a different guest mix. Also in different areas of the world. Each sailing region has its own menu cycle. So the Alaska menu cycle is different than the Mediterranean menu cycle, or the Caribbean menu cycle is again different from the Baltic. And within that menu cycle, executive chef tries to move the menu items around in such a way that he has the most popular items, usually on a night that the ship is in port late, because then a lot of guests are off the ship, or he is on special nights such as with the barbecue that we're also doing at times on the open decks. All of that because he obviously has a food cost to adhere to. So that way, with the knowledge that we have, knowing how many dishes usually get ordered, so we also produce a certain amount of dishes. All of that just primarily to maintain our food costs and to make sure we stay within the budget. Now, obviously, on board cruise ships, crew life is very important. You're on a cruise ship with 800 crew, 800 crew from up to 60, 70 different nationalities. Holland America Line has a predominantly Indonesian Filipino crew. That is due to historical purposes and the fact that Holland America Line actually had its schools in Indonesia and in the Philippines, where they would train the staff before they came to the ship. So dining room staff would be trained in Indonesia, as well as housekeeping. So all housekeeping and dining room was Indonesian. The bar department, front office and the kitchen was mainly Filipino because the school was in the Philippines as a result of that. However, there literally are so many different nationalities. The Holland America Line being Dutch originally, there's a lot of Dutch people on board the ship as well. However, for the rest, there's hardly any nationality that I never ran into. Out of Eastern Europe a lot, out of the UK, US, Canada, South America, many different nationalities, the Caribbean, Asia. Australians seem to always come around everywhere as well. So it is a very multicultural mix, which for you as a crew member is also very interesting because you meet people from many different nationalities. And a lot of things are organized on board. So if you look at the top right picture, that is actually a celebration for Indonesian Independence Day. So on that day, there is always a flag raising ceremony and a complete ceremony being held by the Indonesian crew. After which the galley team prepares a traditional rijsttafel, which is a lot of traditional dishes from Indonesia. And then, as you can see, the crew mess gets decorated, and it's always a popular day Indonesian Independence Day, I gotta admit. The bottom right corner is also, it's crew barbecue on the bow. So the Holland America Line Vista class ships had an open bow, no further construction on there, which was quite nice because you could do a lot of things on there. And in this case, a barbecue. Obviously, this was on the North End. And as far as I can see from the background, it was probably somewhere in the Mediterranean. And it was always very much appreciated. You need to do things like this because you're on board a ship for 6, 7, 8, 9 months at a time. Yes, you get shore leave, absolutely. I've been to many places around the world. I've seen a lot of things. But still, you know, you're seeing the same people every day, which makes it very, very important to have some downtime as well, which is something like a crew barbecue. Maybe to share as well, the cabin arrangements differ from cruise line to cruise line. So I'm with Holland America. Officers always had a single cabin. However, with other cruise lines, that sometimes differs. I believe Disney keeps sharing quite a long way up because they find that very important. But the crew generally shares a cabin, and then 2 cabins share a bathroom. The petty officers, which are usually supervisors, they share a cabin, but that cabin has a private bathroom. And then everyone with officer status would have a private cabin, obviously with a private bathroom as well. And then if you get to the real hot shots of the ship, the staff officers, so captain, staff captain, hotel director, and the chief engineer, they would have a nice, nearly an apartment with a balcony, separate bedroom. Captain has an office next to his cabin as well. So then you're in the, in the more luxurious conditions to be staying on the ship. But those people generally are already on board for 20, 25 years, careers at sea. So quite a while. So the rest of the pictures, the bottom left is me preparing barbecue in Corsica. I actually still remember that day. So it is already 8 years ago. It was a little bit windy while the ship is departing from port. And then the top left corner is actually an interesting one. I don't know if anyone in the class has ever been on a cruise and has ever experienced this, but this is the crossing the Equator ceremony. And the arrival of King Neptune on board the ship. You could actually see him sitting on his throne on the right side of the picture. And the idea is that it's mainly done as entertainment for the guest, but it's also a long nautical tradition where new crew members who, for the first time ever, cross the equator, either north to south to north, have to earn their right as a polywog to become a actual seafarer. And on your first time you do the equator, there's a sign up, and usually the sign up is it's said to be voluntary, but usually your supervisor will sign you up voluntarily for you, and you need to come in front of King Neptune, and then they always give you a treatment. It is done. We use food coloring with some goo, some water from where we put some fish in so that it smells nice and good, and some eggs in there before we take it out, just to make sure that it's all very comfortable and very nice experience while you're there. And that's how you earn your right to be a seafarer, and I think every long-term sailor has undergone it. It's this one was the second one I experienced, because the first one I was not in a position to take pictures for obvious reasons, and it's always good fun, and it's always nice to see it happening. I heard that actually cargo ships take it a bit more serious when it comes to that. It's not done for passenger entertainment, but actually really because it is a tradition. So a couple more things that you will see on board a cruise ship. The left picture, obviously, is Zuiderdam. This one is at anchor. Holland America Line has its own private island in the Caribbean, Half Moon Cay. Quite fun, very nice, beautiful beaches, palm trees, sunshine, and only kind of like an extension of the ship. The ship will come there, will tender into port. The port is maintained by Holland America Line. There's a crew on the island, but for the rest, everything that is there actually comes from the ship. So in the morning, it's always 7 a.m. Ready for port call. You have half your team report down on the gangway because they need to bring all the supplies from the ship to the island. So everything that's being sold in the bar, all the food that's being cooked in the barbecues on the island, everything is being brought from the ship in big containers. It's quite a hectic day. It's always a good day. It's a fun day. You can work on your suntan while you're at it. But it requires probably one of the most complex logistical processes that you can imagine. All of a sudden, 1,500 guests need to be fed off the ship on the island. And everything needs to be brought from the ship to the island and back again without running out of anything. So it's always, I can say as onboard management, we're always happy that day has passed. And we don't have to do it anymore for at least another week. I remember my last contract as F&B director on board. I was very happy to hear that it was a Caribbean itinerary, which was out of Tampa, and Half Moon Cay is too far away from Tampa to make it. So Half Moon Cay was not included in the itinerary, and that is always a very joyful news to get when you're looking into your next ship assignment. The top right picture is Panama Canal. It's one of those other feats that is quite awesome when you get to see it because you're working on a cruise ship. As I said, you come to a lot of places around the world. I've been to all continents with Holland America Line. Africa is not very much covered for the obvious reason that there are not a lot of suitable cruise ports. It would require a lot of sea days. I did read that in, I believe, 2022, they're going to do another Africa Grand Voyage. Apparently that popular that it's sold out in 3 days, the entire ship. And it will circumnavigate Africa in what I remember is something like 65 days. You can go on shore excursion to a safari in Tanzania and wine tasting in South Africa. But as a crew member on board, I think one of the best things is actually that you get to see so many different places. And the best thing is you get paid for it, more or less. This one, I've always wanted to see the Panama Canal, probably since I saw it on the Discovery Channel or so. And I do have to say, after probably the third time going through it, it's not that interesting anymore. But after you've been through it for about 25 times, it's really not interesting anymore. But obviously, there's guests that are taking this cruise particularly for it. And it is very, very impressive to see on the first go. The ship is only about 5 to 7 foot narrower than the locks actually are. And along the way, the ship will hit the side of the lock. It's inevitable, basically. But then again, it's solid steel, quite a thick hull, so it's not a big issue. There's only, you will see every cruise ship that goes through the Panama Canal will get painting after they've been through it, just to touch up the hull, because there's always paint being scratched off. But it's actually a full day. It takes about 8 hours, the entire transit. You go through 3 locks. And you start by the Bridge of the Americas on the Pacific side, or the Gatun locks on the Caribbean side. And it is 8 hours of absolute pure heat all around the outside decks, because it is very, very warm in Panama, I can say. The bottom right picture is actually dry dock. So sometimes you are lucky enough to experience dry dock. And dry dock mean every ship goes out of the water probably once every 3 to 4 years. Make sure that the bottom of the hull gets scraped off again, and because there's too much plants that are going to start growing on the hulls. This one particular, this picture was taken in Sydney, Australia. This was actually an emergency dry dock. What happened is that the propeller of this particular type of ship, which is Vista class, is sort of like an outboard engine. It's an azipod, which means that it can rotate 360 degrees around, but it's actually hanging outside the ship. And what accidentally happened is it hit something. They still don't know what, because it didn't happen in port actually, but the azipod stopped working. Luckily enough, the ship has two, so it was able to continue a little bit further, but it's not recommended to do extensive sailing with only one azipod. Fortunately, Carnival has a spare azipod just standing by for one of its ships that they needed. So that one was shipped from Miami to Australia, and the ship was put into dry dock. In the entire Australia and New Zealand region, there was only one dry dock big enough to accommodate a ship of this size, at about nearly 1,000 feet long, and that was the Australian Navy shipyard in Sydney. So we were probably in the safest location in Sydney because it was right in the middle of a Navy base. We were there for about 2 weeks, and because it was an emergency dry dock, it was mostly outdoor work that was being done, which is very good because it means that your team as the hotel department doesn't really need to do a lot. And it was 2 weeks of getting off the ship, exploring Sydney, going up to the Blue Mountains, and enjoying going out in Sydney a little bit. It was probably one of the best dry docks I ever did, but generally they're not that pleasant, I can say. But it's necessary maintenance that gets done to the ship. The ships don't stop; they run every day of the year. People sometimes, I remember passengers asking me, so after this, is the ship when is the ship sailing again? Well, we pull into port at usually 6:30 in the morning on home port. By 7, we start letting passengers off the ship. By 10, that is completed. And by 12:30, the new passengers are joining again. So, and by 5 o'clock, we're casting off our lines and we're out. So all of that is a very closely choreographed operation, because if a ship is not sailing and doesn't have passengers on board, it's also not making money. And an average cruise ship will cost roughly, depending on the size, but the Holland America ships were probably around $600 million. So obviously it's a lot of capital investment. The staff on board needs to be paid. The most expensive thing when running a cruise ship is the fuel. That needs to be paid. And the engines are always running, because obviously the ship needs power as well. So unless if you're in an advanced port where they have shore hookup, where they connect with a power cable from shore to the ship, one of the engines will always be running, unfortunately. So for that reason, dry docks are usually tried to be kept as short as possible, because in dry dock it's only costs money. There's obviously no money being made, even though the crew bar is doing a very good business during dry dock, I can say that's for sure. So on the left bottom corner, a life raft. This particular one was on a Pacific crossing as passenger entertainment, to say it as such. We did a presentation on all the life-saving equipment that we have, and procedures and approaches. As a crew member, you are these days you are required to do a survival at sea training. I've done mine as well. As a manager, I was required to do the slightly more advanced training. So we were sent for 5 days to a school. In my case, it was Southampton in the UK. And we did a training on survival at sea, at first aid, and in my opinion, the most fun one, which was firefighting at sea. Of which 1.5 days was theory. That was not so much fun, but then the last day was the practical part, and that was of course the good part that everybody enjoys, or especially every guy enjoys doing. Fully donned out with jackets, kits, and everything, going out into some simulated fire. Obviously, cruise ships, you cannot just call the fire department when there is something going on, or especially in this case, this was in the Pacific. So the closest port might be Hawaii or Fiji, and then being about 1,000 nautical miles away. So the ship has lifeboats and life rafts. In this case, it's a life raft, obviously. That's where the crew actually goes into. Lifeboats are reserved for passengers. They're probably a little bit more comfortable. I don't know. I don't think either one is particularly in a place where you want to be. And they will be able to sustain or accommodate for up to 5 days. These days, with all the technology and everything that ships have, 5 days there will be help. Also, the cruise ships generally don't go in very deserted waters, etc. So the estimate is that you only need to survive for about 24 hours before help has arrived. Then obviously there's fire teams on board, 4 fire teams that are fully equipped with everything to fight a fire. I've been on a ship that has had a fire, twice actually. Once was in an incinerator fire, where you would think, well, that's supposed to be in an incinerator to have fire, but this was a slightly out of control incinerator fire, which is then handled. The other one was actually an interesting one. The first one ever happened in that aspect, so it became a case study even at the nautical schools, where a outdoor area where they had some old rags stored became that hot because of the sun in the Caribbean that it automatically combusted basically, and a fire started. Unfortunately, that was next to the funnel, and that area is very difficult to access. And it was also very difficult for the fire teams to actually get there to put off the fire. With some ingenious work from the deck department, they actually did get there, and it was all handled. But it was the first one ever, first situation ever to be like that. Just a little point as well on the life raft. This is usually where cadets get used for, the interns from the Nautical Academy, because each and every one with a life vest in this picture is actually a cadet. So they get all the fun jobs basically. Maybe also to indicate how isolated you are sometimes on a ship when you're doing trans-Pacific or transatlantic crossings. The Pacific being a slightly longer one than the Atlantic. I was once doing a crossing from Hawaii to the West Coast, and we were roughly 2 days out of Hawaii, and we had 2 passengers who on Hawaii went out, did exploring, whatever, went into nature, and apparently they were bitten by a little reptile, and they were poisoned from that animal, it appeared. And for that poison, they needed an antidote. And the antidote was not available on board the ship because, yes, there is a fully stocked, fully staffed medical department, 2 doctors, 5 nurses on board, but they obviously do not have everything available. So the decision was made. We couldn't turn back because we were in a point where also no helicopter could get to. So the ship went at full speed towards the West Coast. At the same time, a Coast Guard C-130 took off and from the West Coast and flew in our direction with the antidote on board. And they actually dropped that via parachute next to the ship with our man overboard team in the fast rescue boat picking it up and the passenger actually surviving. Everybody happy, passenger saved, good thing, obviously, of course. I do hope they have a good travel insurance, because I'm pretty sure that Coast Guard plane was not cheap to come out. Plus, of course, the fact that we were burning about 5,000 gallons an hour for the main engines to run at full speed. Not very good for the environment, I'd say. So, after all that story about cruise ships, which is a very exciting business to be in, I can highly recommend everyone to at least consider doing that for 1-2 contracts. It is great. You meet people everywhere from around the world, different nationalities. You make friends everywhere. You see a lot of places, and maybe also the thing is, it works on your personality. You'll learn. You start to appreciate certain things more. Like I said, I had my own cabin. I had my own cabin, but at times it was not really big. So all of a sudden you start to appreciate more when you're having a small apartment, but at least you have a view. So I can definitely recommend everyone doing it. It's a great experience. It's very nice to do. I think if you work hard and you show what you can do, then you definitely have the opportunity to grow. I think my career path has definitely shown that with Holland America Line. The opportunities are there. You just got to make sure you show that you can handle. So then I eventually decided to go to Montenegro, a very tiny country. This is a picture of the place where I work, actually. We are a super yacht marina. We berth super yachts up to about 150, 180 meters. At the moment, the second largest sailing yacht in the world is docked here, the Black Pearl. We had the largest one as well, but they left about a month ago. And actually our biggest berth is 250 meters long. Could accommodate ships, basically cruise ships. And we are actually in talks with a cruise line, Seabourn. We are not interested in the very big cruise ships, such as Holland America, MSC, Carnival. They also don't carry the clientele that we normally have. But we are very interested in Seabourn. Seabourn is very interested to come here. We have all the facilities, so we're just seeing what's going to happen. But it is very interesting for me because I've always been on the side of the cruise ships, and after some different path, now I'm on the other side where I'm part of the port where the cruise ships are going, and it starts to show you all the logistics and all the functionalities that are required in order to facilitate a port call. So all of a sudden you need to talk about security protocols and traffic flow, because we have 2-3 piers, and if the ship is going to dock at one of those piers and all of a sudden there's 300-400 guests coming off that ship, they need to be safely coming from that ship to the land. Basically, we don't want them to be lingering around the marina, also for reasons because our marina guests want to have a certain amount of privacy. But they're also on a tour. They have a timeline they need to stick to. So all those things make it very interesting. So I'm now working together with our director of Marina, who oversees all the nautical part of our operation, as well as government affairs, overseeing the contact with the government on setting this up and starting this initiative, which makes it, in my opinion, very interesting time to be here. On top of all the other things that I'm doing here. So maybe just, this is a picture of where I am right now. This obviously doesn't look very attractive, but this is what it currently looks like. We bought an old Navy shipyard of the Yugoslav Navy, which was completely derelict. There was nothing happening there anymore. It was contaminated. It was dirty. It was just overall not a very pleasant place to be. And we worked some magic. And this is basically what it looks like right now. We have about 1/3 of the total space built. We have just over 400 apartments. We have a 5-star hotel, 450 berths in our marina. We have 35 retail stores, 7 restaurants. We have a yacht club, sports club. We actually also own a shipyard across the bay for super yacht repair, refit, and works to be done. We have a heliport on the property as well. We have a international school because there's a lot of expats that are living here and working. So we want to make sure that they're happy year round. So altogether, we just provide a very large, very expensive product, really a destination. That's more or less the map of the property that we have. We are currently building at number 13. That is Boca Place. There's another 200 apartments coming there in what we call more affordable housing, because the general apartment that is in the village will cost around €1 million. The ones in Boca Place will be at around 300,000 euros for a one bedroom, which is the more affordable category around here. And then after that, we're actually going to build at number 22 and 17 in that block. That's where the next project is starting and where we are preparing for at the moment, doing the designs and structures. We're planning on expanding the marina as well, adding another 450 birds. We're planning on adding a number of tennis courts as well. We already have 4, but we want to add another 5. And hopefully next year we will organize our polo tournament again, which we have always been doing and has a lot of international guests and international teams actually coming. But because of Corona, well, it was not really the best time to do it, to say it as such. Just to give a quick overview, I know it's not really, but this is more or less how our department or how our company operates. We have particularly operations, property development, a couple of joint ventures, all led by our CEO, and our holding company in Dubai. The Investment Corporation of Dubai is the owner of Porto Montenegro, quite a well-known company, one of the largest sovereign wealth funds in the world, which does give us a lot of benefit because funding is generally not an issue for us. And even in these Corona days, yes, of course, we have budgets and we need to stick within our limitations, but it is not automatically that our owner feels the pressure that money is drying up, which is quite nice, I have to say. So a little pitch about my own department. I oversee these venues, which is the PMYC pool, which is probably the nicest pool over here on the coast, Latitude 42 nightclub, the sports club, the rooftop restaurant, the Blue Room, which is a crew bar that we operate as well for the crew that is here. And all of that is the hospitality and leisure department, together with Regent Hotel, which I do asset management for, and then development management for the 2 new hotels that we're building as well. And doing some negotiations and interactions with operators of both hotels, of restaurants, of a variety of businesses. We're now talking with a couple of tennis academies as well to open up here. And we just made a deal with the Porsche, the car manufacturer, for them to set up shop here during the summer with a new showroom, with events, a driving experience, some... we have a circuit up in the mountains where they want to do some driving as well out of here. So I do hope to get my hands on a Porsche this summer, to be quite honest. That would be quite nice. So yeah, this is the view, the normal summertime view from my office, more or less. It's not the worst place in the world. It is a nice location. I absolutely love it here. Never expected that when I came here, because I came here for 2 weeks, 2 months only, as a project consultant, and that turned into now almost a year here. It's very nice, very enjoyable. I never envisioned myself going to Montenegro or living in Montenegro, but if you go outside your comfort zone, you can get into these places that are just amazing. And I can definitely recommend anyone going abroad and looking out of the comfort zone, because you might be surprised.
I have very good presentation, very beautiful place. How are the beaches there? What's the climate like?
The climate is fantastic. The beaches are horrible, actually. It's all like pebble and rocky beaches, so not really the sandy beaches that you're used to, unfortunately. So yeah, I guess for that I need to go to Spain or so.
Yeah, but the climate's pretty moderate in the winter. So
Yeah.
now, today? It's in the 70s. That's not bad.
No, today's upper 70s, maybe 80. I think in January it was around about upper 50s, low 60s. Summertime around 100,
Oh,
105.
wow.
So yeah, we never get snow apparently. Obviously, I only have one winter to compare it to, but I've been told that we never get snow. Wintertime does get rain, but I think I have two sweaters in my cupboard to my closet to be quite honest.
Is there is there a university, a hotel school there in the country?
There is a hotel school in Kotor, which is about 3 miles away, but it is a very small one from what I gather. I have a couple of students this summer working for me. In the team that I have here.
You have a lot of managers coming from, say, the Swiss schools.
Not so much. I think I'm one of the few here who has come from hotel management in general, actually. The majority did not study hotel management. It's just a variety of things. Our hotel general manager, he's German. He went to, didn't go to Switzerland, he went to one over there, Bad Honnef. Yeah. But there's not that many actually from Switzerland. A lot of them here locally from the one in Kotor, or there's one in Serbia as well, which a lot of them go to, or just study economics in general, basically.
How's the airport there?
Fascinating. It's the Tivat has an airport itself, and then Podgorica, the capital, has an airport. Both of them are not particularly big. The Tivat airport also was built by the former communist regime of Yugoslavia. It has seen some updating, but not really into the full modern age yet. The Podgorica airport is actually quite nice, very small, but a very nice airport. Normally, actually, getting here is very easy. There's flights all throughout Europe. At the moment, it's a little bit less. I'm traveling home end of the month for a few days. I need to fly to Istanbul first, and then from Istanbul, I fly to Düsseldorf in Germany. And then from Düsseldorf, I go home by car. Just because of the very limited flights. However, for summertime, Lufthansa has already said that they're going to start operating, as well as a number of British carriers, EasyJet, Jetstar, Jet2, a couple of Russian operators. So, and apparently Fly Dubai and an operator out of Israel. So might try to see if this summer or late in the summer I can go to Israel for a couple of days. I heard they're doing quite well on vaccination.
Yes, they have. They're the leader. Israel's the leader. U.S. is coming on now, but Europe's really hasn't done a great job for the most part with the vaccinations. Sorry to say. How about there in Montenegro? How's
compared to Montenegro, Europe is doing a great job.
Oh, okay.
So then again, there's only 600,000 people living here. I think they got their first vaccine shipment 2 weeks ago. So they are actually starting to get going on that. It was just very unfortunate that last year, July, there were elections in this country. And the party that has ruled for 30 years was moved out of power. And I think that change of power and everything and the struggle that came with it has not helped the process of getting a proper Corona response, and that it has impacted it.
Yes. Talk about the cuisine, the food there. Do you have wineries, vineyards, and?
Yep.
Yes.
Actually, the food is very well Mediterranean, so you get a lot of seafood. It's a bit Italian styled, some Greek influences as well. Altogether, it's just very enjoyable. If you don't like seafood, then you're in the wrong place. But otherwise, it's nice. Grilled fish, seafood platters, pastas are everywhere as well. So it's very. And the best thing is you go out and you go for dinner in a reasonable place. So obviously, all the places in Porto Montenegro are quite expensive because of the location. But if you just go to a normal place, I can have dinner with drinks and it'll cost me €7.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And it looks beautiful. Well, that's great. That's a
Yeah.
great story. Let's see if our students have any questions for you, Niek. Anything, class? So here you have an alum of NAU, and any questions you might have about getting into the cruise industry. Any tips? So if our students after this class want to work for Carnival, Royal Caribbean, any Holland America, part of Carnival, any suggestions for them to get?
Well, obviously, I would choose for Holland America if I were you,
Yeah.
but I'm a bit biased in that aspect, I'd say. Getting in, I don't know. Being realistic, I don't know how it's going to be. The cruise line is pretty hard hit at the moment, the cruise world. But I think there's cruise business is bouncing back. You can see it in the news reports as well. Cruise bookings are through the roof almost, and it is definitely gonna get back. It might take a little bit. I don't know when it comes to internships, because I remember on Holland America line we only got like 1 or 2 interns per ship. But if you want to work for it, then I would recommend just go to the cruise line directly. There's a number of agencies as well that do recruiting for cruise ships. I think one of the most famous one is V Ships in Monaco. But I can definitely recommend, so let's say it like this. Some cruise lines only use an agency. V Ship, I believe, does exclusive for Viking and Silver Seas. But most cruise lines also take direct applications with themselves. And they prefer that because obviously they need to pay the agencies. And when you go to an agency and at that moment there is not a direct, because they will advertise any positions all the time. But that doesn't mean that that position is available at that moment. They're just building their database. And then as soon as, let's say Holland America goes to this agency and says like, hey, I need a bar waiter or I need a restaurant manager. They go into their database and they say, oh, I got all these candidates. So they start sending out emails. Hey, are you still interested in this? Can you give me an update? And then maybe, that can be a week later, that can be a month later, or that can be 6 months later. I would recommend apply directly with the cruise lines because they will advertise the positions they have available at that moment. And be flexible. It might be that they say, I don't have a restaurant waiter available for you, but I have a, housekeeping attendant. I'm just saying something now. And, you got to accept the point where with all the cruise lines, you got to start at the bottom. You got to show what you have and what capabilities you have. And then you can grow up. But it's good because you will actually see how the work on board the ships is and how it really, because what I said in the beginning is it cannot be compared to anything on land. I remember I was at quite a large hotel where they said they had 600 rooms. And they were like, oh, this is a very large hotel, but it's still nowhere close to a cruise ship. And on top of that, hotels on land, if you ask a hotel manager, what is your average occupancy year round? They, depending on where they are, they'll give you a number, usually in the 80s if they're doing quite well. If you're like in New York City, they're probably mostly in the 90s in very popular locations. Cruise lines, they try and sell their ship to the max every single sailing. And I've been on too many cruises where literally they said there's no open cabins, meaning every cabin on the ship has been sold. And that is the general. I remember on Holland America Line, we were sailing with a fleet-wide occupancy average of 98.7%. Every hotel on land is going to be extremely jealous of that. That also means you always are fully booked. You always have full capacity, all passengers on board. It's always busy. There is no how do you call it? No downtime. So you always have to. It is performing every day of the week, because that is, you know, one thing that does need to be realized. You do work 7 days a week, which puts you in the first 2-3 weeks. It's you need to get adjusted to it, but then after that, you're used to it and it's normal. It's just another day. So yep. Don't let yourself be turned down or turned off on this because of 7-day work weeks.
That's great. That's great advice. What about working on yachts? They're becoming more and more popular. What about opportunities for students on some of these mega yachts that you have in your port?
There are opportunities. This is a very specialized business. I have a couple of friends who work on yachts. Usually they started on cruise ships and then worked their way down to, or worked their way over. It's not so much down, but worked their way over to yachts. It is different. It's yachting in general, you know, compares to working for Ritz-Carlton or Four Seasons, or, you know, really like the absolute top of the business, more or less. It will require some certificates. All ships require that because it is mandatory by law. That's the STCW certificates. You can get them in a lot of places. Usually requires 2 weeks of training, which is that firefighting, which is survival at sea, which is lifeboat handling, those kind of things. If you are serious about doing that, make sure you get the certificate. Because if you apply and you don't have the certificate, you're automatically at the bottom of the pile, because there's always candidates that do have those certificates. And starting out, it requires a little bit of luck, to be honest. Probably good to go to Fort Lauderdale, Key West, go here to Puerto Montenegro, even though it's not pretty Antibes in south of France, Mallorca, the real hot spots for yachting, and just walk the pier. That's literally how jobs are obtained, especially in the beginning, because you don't have contacts, you don't have connections. So you just walk down the pier, you talk to people, you know, there's always people standing off the yachts, especially in Mallorca, Antibes, Cannes, all the real yachting hotspots. There's always people standing off the pier, and you just ask them. Sometimes most of the times you're unlucky, and they'll say, "No, I'm sorry, we're full." But you know, you just the right attitude, showing the right presentation. You're talking to the chief stewardess, steward or stewardess, usually stewardess, on yachts. And you say, listen, I'm looking for a job. You have the right introduction. At that moment, you know, they just had a stewardess sign off, quit, resign, no replacement. They're in a tight spot. They have another charter coming up, or the owner is coming that day or the next day. They need a replacement. Getting someone from an agency, from a job board, from a contact will always require another week before that person gets all the paperwork, gets there. You there with the paperwork, all done. You have your resume. You have something to show for that you've worked in a place. You know, you stand a very good chance to get the job. And that's literally how you basically get into yachting. All the ones that I know, that's how they more or less got into it. Either they knew someone who introduced them, who got them a spot on the yacht they were on, or something along those lines, or they were just in the marina and asking people.
That's great. That's the real world.
That's the yachting business works like that, and everybody knows everybody. Make sure you finish your contract, because if you don't, then the referral is not good. And then the next yacht, everybody knows each other, and they start asking. But the same applies to cruise ships as well. You know, it's still a small industry, small world. I remember even now that I get applications from cruise ships, and I'm like, oh, let me call, whatever, a friend of mine who works at NCL or is here, and I can look at resumes and just see, because things don't match up or they don't work out, or everybody knows everybody in the business. And yachts, it's even worse, but yeah.
Okay, that's great. Well, good. Students, any questions?
I have a question.
Great, go ahead, Catalina.
So you've worked on a number of cruise ships, and now I'm wondering if you enjoy sailing on them as a guest, or if working on them has kind of just turned you off from being a passenger.
I always joke that I'm never ever going to take a cruise, just simply because I already spent so much time on cruise ships in general. I've actually done a cruise once. I've sailed on board with a friend of mine who was working with Holland America. They had a program called Friend on Board. You could sail with a friend of yours for up to 30 days. She arranged that I got a nice guest cabin, everything, all good. So I was kind of like a passenger, except that I didn't have the passenger card. I still had a crew card, because you're still kind of part of the crew. You're a non-revenue passenger. So I enjoyed my time. I do have to say it was very nice. I definitely had a great time. It was Canada, New England, Montreal to Boston. No, actually Montreal to Fort Lauderdale. Because I went to Cape Canaveral. I still remember it. But it was a nice cruise. I enjoyed it, but I don't think I would ever do a cruise again, except, that's what I always say, there's two cruises that I would do. One, I want to do a short cruise on the Oasis or the Allure of the Seas, the super mega ships, because I just want to see how it is. Because in my opinion, it's just like a cattle drive, getting everyone into that dining room around dinner time. And I just want to see how it is. And the other is, I like to do expedition cruise, which is a much more smaller ship to the Galapagos Islands in the South Pacific. But for that, I need to save for another couple of years probably before I can afford that. So.
Thank you.
It's a great question and great answer. Anything else, students, for Nick? All right. Well, this has been just so informative and interesting. Thanks, Nick, for your perspective, and your career track is very, very interesting. You've seen a lot of the world. I always like to ask people, what's your favorite country? Maybe one or two of your top destinations in the world that you really like going to.
Let's say, like, my favorite ports that I've been to with the ship. I've always loved Honolulu.
Okay.
Go to. I like Bali in Indonesia. Definitely enjoy that. It's great going out. You have a great nightlife scene, but the food there is fantastic. You can go to the beach. It's just a great destination. And the most fascinating place I've been to is actually Japan, because of the society that is so completely different than everything we are used to in the Western world. And yeah, that was definitely a good one as well. But I have to say, if I think back about what was like the best port call I cannot narrow it down, because every place had something that was great, that was amazing, that was awesome. Where people say like, oh, I would love to go to Santorini in Greece, for example. And where I feel like, yeah, that was a nice port call. Yeah. But I went to fill in the blank, and you get a little bit spoiled though after.
It's a beautiful world.
It's a beautiful world, and getting paid to actually see it is probably even better.
That's right. Well, great. Well, let's give Nick a big hand for just a great job, and really appreciate you coming on. And
You're welcome.